We have not talked about AI as much as we probably ought to and should, and you want to. So our next guest probably needs no introduction. Noah Kadner always has something immensely useful to say, but he agreed to pick up the Organizing AI Projects at Scale challenge. So we're talking about big projects and where AI fits in. And Noah, come take your challenge.
All right. Hello. Thank you. I think I'm mic'd up, but maybe I'll take it as the backup. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Is this working? Okay, fabulous. Hi, everyone. I am Noah Kadner. I'm going to see if we can run a little slide deck here. I have the magical clicker. Let's see if this works. Yes, OK. So we're going to talk about organizing AI projects at scale. OK, this sounds a little oblique, but you're going to love this. First, is there anybody, show of hands, anybody in the room who's heard of me before? OK, a couple people. All right, good. So I worked at Apple in the Pro Apps department, which means I got to work on video creation apps you might have heard of. I'm also a writer at American Cinematographer magazine, so I get to talk to a lot of the top filmmakers. I've been doing this for years. It's really interesting. I get to really see what's coming next down the pipe for filmmaking. And I'm also a virtual production supervisor. Another show of hands, how many people have any familiarity with that term, virtual production? OK, fabulous. OK, believe it or not, 6 years ago, it didn't exist, and I was the one that was kind of in charge of getting people up to speed as to what it was. So more questions. Oh, my God, I'm sorry. Well, this is a school, so here we go. It's kind of like a quiz. Do you use a professional app in your daily workflow? And professional app, you know, I just mean, do you use an app in your workflow these days? OK, some people do. Is it the app? Is it a perfect app? Perfect app? OK, good. Do you have some workarounds? Yes, OK. Final question for this slide. What if you could build an enterprise class app to your personal specs? Would that be awesome? OK, good. All right. So then anybody else, you can leave right now, because the rest of this is going to be really boring, because that's what we're going to talk about. So here is the challenge I've noticed, both being a quote-unquote professional user on the outside, as well as being on the engineering side, on the inside of an awesome company like Apple that makes the best software in the world, is you've got this dichotomy. Users know what they need, but engineers have to juggle those needs with budget, time, project complexity, and all that. And so what software comes down the pipe is oftentimes a compromise between these two poles of gravity. So we had this problem, and again, this is the final one of my jobs, virtual production supervisor. I help oversee this stage down in Mexico City that does all these crazy productions. And we've been doing this now for 4 years, movies, streaming series, lots of car commercials, you name it, with this giant LED wall in Mexico City. It's super awesome, super fun. But we got to a point where we needed some tools that didn't exist because we wanted to make our own movies. We wanted to make our own projects. And so we needed a tool that could help us visualize what these projects would look like before we spent any money. Quality assessment. How do you know the idea you have in your head is going to make a good movie? Well, that's the challenge, because normally what you're talking about is translating, let's say, a feature screenplay, 120 pages or more, into 2,500 plus shots or more. Hundreds of millions of dollars are being spent on these productions. Therefore, this is a challenge because you're kind of shooting in the dark if you don't have a way to visualize this ahead of time. And just to give you a sense of the downside of not getting this right, here's some of the biggest box office bombs of all time. Show of hands. Has anyone seen every movie on this list? That's what I thought. That's the problem. What you see in the movie theater to this day is the studio's best guess as to what people actually want to see. And sometimes they get it really right, and you've got a Titanic. And sometimes they get it really wrong, and you've got a John Carter. Fun movie, but you know they lost a fortune on that one. And surely the studios are not in the business of losing money, but they're taking these shots in the dark. And we, as this little post-production, virtual production stage down in Mexico City, have even less money to risk on this kind of stuff. And so if we want to do our own projects, we need a tool that will allow us to see what these things look like before we actually start spending real money. So we came up with this app called Resonance, which allows you to visualize an entire movie using AI tools. And I know there's a lot of these tools out there, but the goal that we had with this one was, instead of a chat, an agentic workflow, to make something that looked more familiar, like Final Cut Pro, iMovie, like a prosumer professional video app, but that let you create imagery and videos at scale using AI. So this is what we've been working on. We made our own little Mac app, and when I say little, it's gotten bigger and bigger, but we were able to take advantage of all the cool stuff that happens when you don't build these things as a web app, but you build them as a native app running on someone's desktop. You get a lot more power, you get a lot more speed of use, professional UI, well, that's where I come in, and you get the ability to leverage all of the cool stuff that a desktop computer can do that a web browser is a little more challenged in doing. It's a lot more work up front, but you wind up with, all this cool stuff that you can only get if you're working natively on a desktop. These are some of the frameworks that come built in with macOS that we've been able to tap into, making this a desktop app. And it's, getting some traction. We're having some cool proof of concepts with this thing, and we're having a blast. So a little bit more about how it works. So one of the things that I noticed when looking at a lot of the tools out there that people are using for AI video is that they're very good at generating one shot, one image, or even a small sequence, but they don't really have a lot of awareness at the top level of all of the components that go into a large project. If I have a 120-page script, I've got a lot of characters, a lot of locations, costumes, props, scene variations. These can be tens of thousands of assets. And the way people are doing this right now is they're tracking this stuff kind of in an ad hoc workflow, like a spreadsheet over here, Word doc over there, Google this, Google that. And the moment-by-moment workflow of how they are building what needs to look like the same actor from the first scene to the end of the movie is a real challenge. And as you may know, like, consistency in AI tools is the real challenge. So that's what this app does, is it brings that all under one roof. You give it however long your script is, 5 pages, 10 pages, 120 pages, and it just looks at it and breaks it down into all those individual elements ready to begin the work. And this is what it looks like. Very simple workflow here. You can see on the left side all of the elements that become part of your project. And this can be a feature film, this can be a short film, this can be a concept video if you're doing advertising, a product video, you name it. All of it becomes just another asset that lives on the left sidebar there. Here we are looking at the section where we're designing our characters. Every character ends up with their sort of primordial look, which is how they look out of costume, not naked, but in a t-shirt, pants, tasteful, very well done. And what we've done to try and make this much more interactive and professional and easy to work with, instead of just blasting it all into a prompt there at the bottom, all of the parameters that you would be using to control the appearance of your characters are parameters. These are drop-downs. You can pick where they're from, what they look like, how tall they are, what their hair color is, their eyes, what sort of makeup they're wearing, all that kind of stuff. If you want, you can even load up a reference image if you have a real actor that you want to be visualizing as what it looks like in your show. Next, each location shows up as a 360-degree image, so you can precisely do scenes back and forth, put a character here, swing the camera around, you get coverage that matches. Again, all of this is generated based on what the script says, and then you can customize it to your liking. Next, to kind of kick things off creatively, you have the ability for every scene that's in the script to quickly generate a storyboard. You have all these kind of directing parameters that you can choose from, the way you want the coverage to look, traditional, loose, who the focus character is, like who the particular scene is about. And again, this is just a kicking off point. Once you have this generated, or you don't even have to, this can become the basis of shot by shot how you make the final scene, or just kind of a way to get the creative juices flowing. And what's neat about this is you can see in the top right of this storyboard, there's a little heart. Every element that you create with this workflow you can make as many variations of it as you want. When you hit the favorite button up there, that becomes the reference one for everywhere else in the workflow. So if I decide 10 scenes down the road that I want to recast somebody, I just jump back to the character sequence section, favorite a new character, and boom, that filters down to everything that flows from that point on. So instead of having to redo all that work, it's all just one giant database that knows exactly who's who, where they are in every scene, and it just works. This is kind of the heart of the entire workflow. On the left, this is a node-free environment. Who's seen Comfy UI? OK, Comfy UI, super powerful workflow, but as a node-based workflow, it can be quite challenging to folks that are not programmers or engineers. So we designed this in such a way that everything is very simple, no nodes, no connections. On the left side, all the characters that you want to load into the scene, the locations, anything additional like props, you name it. The right side is, again, all of your parameters, what the camera work is like. Is it a moving camera? Is it a close-up? Am I going to go straight off of the storyboard? Or am I going to do something more freeform based on what I'm describing in the action? Then I generate a keyframe image, and boom, that becomes the first frame of my video. You can see on the top, every action and line of dialogue in the scene becomes one of those little blocks, and boom, you have a sequence. And again, all of this is generated the moment you import the script. And because we could, and because it's kind of in my DNA, we added our own little editor as well, because what's nice about this is when you're done with your project, rather than even having to bounce elsewhere, if you just want to see how the scene is coming together, you don't even have to leave the app. But if you do, you can export finished video or even XML, so you can bring that into another editing app, you name it. Goal is to just make it easy, make it fast, and make it fun. But one thing that we learned along the way is if you just sit down with vibe coding tools and say, give me that app, you're going to get a huge pile of code that is neither extensible nor usable on an enterprise level, but just kind of a big mess that will ultimately bog down because the AI will not care about how you've structured it or what you have in mind for modularization or expandability or being able to work with a team. So if there's one takeaway I've found in this entire workflow is if you have that ability to combine what you want to see in an app with all of the great software development paradigms that have been around for years, you can truly leverage these tools and make it a lot more than what we would call vibe coding, but actually using this as a real tool. And that's it. The observation I just want to share with you is if you can take what the subject matter experts, i.e. the end users, want to see in a tool, and what the engineers bring to the table in terms of all of this great coding techniques that they've been doing for years, you have the power to create your own enterprise class apps. And from what I can see, we are just scratching the surface. So that is my pitch. If anybody would like to check this app out, we have a website, which in my infinite wisdom, I did not put the slide that gives you the web address. Would anybody like the web address? OK. Hold on. I wish. You know how hard it is to get a web address these days?